Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Valeriy Kostyuk with us tonight. He is the executive director of an organization in Canada supporting Ukraine. The organization is called Valeriy?
Canada-Ukraine Foundation.
The Canada-Ukraine Foundation. What does the Canada-Ukraine Foundation do, sir?
So we've been founded in 1995, so we're about 30 years old, and ever since we've been responsible for, support, sort of uniting Canadians over the idea of supporting Ukraine, and we've been sort of uniting the Canadian society over this idea. In 2022, a few weeks before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine has begun, together with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, we launched Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, because we've been following along the news and we knew that something was coming down the pipe in regards to the full-scale invasion, and we thought it's better for us as Ukrainian Canadians to be prepared. So we launched Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, and we started gathering funds in order to be able to react to aggression in Ukraine quickly. And when on February 24th, 2022, Russia has begun its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we ended up being able to deliver aid fairly quickly.
And is this humanitarian aid, military aid, what?
Humanitarian aid. So Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal and Canada-Ukraine Foundation as a whole focuses on humanitarian aid specifically. We focus on medical, we focus on civil and human rights, we focus on education, we even have surgical missions that we've been organizing since 2015 with Canadian surgeons going into Ukraine to do complex reconstructive surgeries. So there's a really wide range of portfolio that we have because at the end of the day, we reflect the needs that are in Ukraine. And we, as Ukrainian Canadians, are here, are able to, gather the support of the society, not only the Ukrainian Canadian community, but the Canadian society as a whole, in order to mobilize our efforts in order to send aid to Ukraine.
Now, the need, must be unbelievable. I've done interviews. You undoubtedly have, contacts, friends, associates, etc. in Ukraine. I can't imagine what it would be like to be living in a war zone, in a city, in a country that's attacked on a daily basis. Tell me a little bit about what the need is.
So just a little bit about imagining what it's like. I have to say I was born there. I moved here in 2006, and I'm a proud Canadian of Ukrainian descent. So I have a lot of family and friends there. So and a lot of our board members and volunteers and staff are in exactly the same position as me. So we're very well connected, not only through our partners on the ground, but also through our family ties and whatnot. It's every day is unpredictable. A lot of Ukrainians are living, day to day, not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. A lot of men and women ended up going to the front to defend our country and defend at the end of the day democratic values that they're all been fighting for centuries, to be completely honest. And with the beginning of Russian aggression in Ukraine in 2014, the society in Ukraine has changed. There has been the unity of responsibility over the land has, I think has increased. So currently, what's happening? 97% of the missiles that fly into Ukraine from Russia are targeted towards civilian infrastructure. It's residential buildings, it's hospitals.
97% is going to civilian infrastructure.
97%. So it's targeting hospitals. The most famous in the recent, I think, few months case of a civilian hospital is the Children's Hospital of Madrid, that has been a state-of-the-art hospital that only reopened a few years ago after significant investment from private donors and government in order to rebuild that. And that whole entire hospital, majority of it is destroyed. And especially, they hit a dialysis building that focuses on treating children that need that life-saving treatment that got completely destroyed. So, and then there's countless cases of schools. There's cultural institutions that are being targeted as well. There's also power and energy infrastructure. So Ukraine is currently operating at 40% of their power generating capacity, which impacts significantly, the ability of the country to supply their citizens with power and energy. So a lot of the questions that are currently arising is how do we sustain ourselves? How do we decentralize the dependency on the central power generating capacity? So, for example, Canada Ukraine Foundation, we've been spending a lot of funds on power and energy projects. Like currently, we're focusing on preparing Ukrainians for the winter time. So we have opened up a special fundraiser through Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal to raise funds to prepare Ukrainians for the winter. In the previous years, in the past 2 years of the full-scale invasion, we've ended up sending 161 power generators. We sent over 81 tons of seasonal medicines for Ukrainians to get through this winter. And one thing that I can't believe we're talking about in the 21st century, we've sent about 5,000 wood-burning ovens to Ukraine. Well, we've purchased not only we've ended up sending it to everyday Ukrainians to be able to take advantage of the wood burning ovens, and they're much more dependable than power and electricity closer to the front lines and in the frontline regions. 5,000 wood burning ovens. So we've ended up actually purchasing them through a Ukrainian business. So we ended up actually not only helping Ukrainians in the front lines, we've also aided the economy by helping, workers of that steel manufacturing to pay their bills. We sent 8,400 beds over the past 2 years, water purification kits, and over 150,000 food boxes. So all of this really, impacts quite specifically the issues that Ukrainians are facing today and in the upcoming winter. And one thing that I want to also say is that there's never enough of anything whenever you're in a war zone.
Yeah.
There's always going to be demand, and quite often, there's questions that are being raised of, we've already done so much. Why do we need to do more? Well, we have to do more in order to help Ukrainians, first of all, not only stand through this, but also to be able to allow these women, brave men and women that ended up deciding to go, that ended up demonstrating bravery and going to defend their families up at the front lines so that they're able to focus on their primary task, but also for us to make sure that their families and friends and loved ones are taken care of. And that's exactly what we're doing from the humanitarian side. We are trying to make sure that these everyday Ukrainians and the vulnerable ones are taken care of. And we're through our partners on the ground are able to effectively and in timely fashion to address the issues that are happening on the ground in Ukraine. And we are, at the end of the day, delivering help on behalf of Canadians to Ukraine, which I think is a very honorable task and something that all of us should be proud of. And my immense gratitude to our donors that have helped us send over $80 million worth of aid to Ukraine.
$80 million. That's incredible. Congratulations. You have a current campaign that's ongoing, I understand?
Yes, so it's winterization. Your listeners can check it out. And learn more. It's on cufoundation.ca. It's open until October 31st, and we're already selecting projects in these sectors in order to address the imminent issues that Ukrainians are going to be facing in the next few months. And this winter is going to be unlike anything else. I mean, after 2 years of strategic targeting of civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, the need will increase, as this war continues. And as the civilians at the end of the day that are getting impacted the most, everyday Ukrainians that want to continue living on their homeland, they want to continue raising families, they want to be part of the civilized world and be a part of, building a democratic world and be part of us. They want the same things as we Canadians want. They want to be able to go to school. They want to be able to spend time with family. They want to be able to enjoy this winter season, just like any of us. Like we're currently all planning on what we're doing over the holidays in the winter, where we're going to go for a holiday with our children that are going to be out of school. We're thinking, okay, we need to buy jackets for our children. We need to. We're also thinking we're even contemplating on what models of snowplows to buy in order to clean our front yards. Ukrainians are thinking about surviving this season.
In the middle
And
of a war. Unbelievable. What's the website people should go to?
cufoundation.ca has all the information and more information on other projects that we do.
We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Valeriy, the executive director of the Canadian Ukrainian Foundation. In just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. My guest tonight is Valeriy Kostyuk. He's the executive director of the Canadian Ukraine Foundation, and we've been talking a little bit about what the foundation has been doing to raise funds and other needed items for Ukraine, humanitarian aid. Valeriy, I wonder if we could take a step back just for a second. You said that you arrived here in, I think you said 2006 from Ukraine. I spent about 6 months in 2006, 2007. Over the course of about 24 months, I've spent about 6 months in Ukraine, in Kyiv and a couple of other cities. At the time, and I guess I really want you to explain to me how this all happened. At the time, I had half my conversations in Ukrainian and half my conversations in Russian. The bankers that I was dealing with, some of them were Ukrainian, and dealing with Western European banks. Some of them were Russian and dealing with Russian banks. The churches that I toured, some were Ukrainian Catholic and other ones were, I guess, Ukrainian Orthodox, but I think they reported to a Russian Orthodox church hierarchy. It seemed to me that really the two cultures, the two languages, the two peoples, and the orientation to Ukraine and to Russia coexisted incredibly well together. What happened?
So I'll also take a step back of what happened. I have to say, for centuries, Russia has been pushing its imperialistic ideals into Ukraine. I have to say, under the Soviet government and even the Tsarist government, the Ukrainian language has been quite severely impacted. The differences in language always show independence from let's say an imperialistic government. And the language is a great identifier of who you are as a nation or even a community, let's say. So for the past centuries, Ukrainian language has been severely impacted. There have been periods of when the language has been completely banned, and there have been periods when language was completely Russified. Under the Soviet Union, I have to say it's and the Russification processes that has been going on for 70 years. So a few generations of Ukrainians have been born under the restrictions of using their native tongue. I have to say I'm originally from Odessa. Many would consider it to be primarily Russian-speaking region, but it's not so.
So just tell us all a little bit about Odessa, the southern part of Ukraine, beautiful beaches on the Black Sea, I think. Is that true?
I have to say it's one of the most fascinating places. A lot of people say, well, Odessa is known for being the capital of humor. So I have to say, for me, as an Odessit, a guy out of Odessa talking about these serious subjects is very painful, and talking about war. But it's the humor in Odessa that continues people to withstand. And right now, the Odessa is holding the seafront in a way of Ukrainian resistance. A personal story. My grandmother is from Kirovohrad region, from a small town called Haivoron. She was raised in a Ukrainian-speaking family. She moved to the city, and because all the education by the Soviet Union has been primarily done in Russian, and it was encouraged for people to use Russian. I have to say, she also fell a victim of Russification in a way. So I have to say, over centuries, this has been, Ukrainian language and Ukrainian rights have been withheld, and the use of the Russian language has been encouraged. When you look at here's the thing. I'm not a historian. I'm not a specialist in the historical aspect. There's a few people I could recommend you talk to in a little bit deeper on this subject. But the eastern part of Ukraine has been severely Russified under the Soviet rule for 70 years of the Soviet rule, and under the Tsarist times as well. So the thing is also that something that the Soviet government has been doing, they've been relocating people, and that's actually something that's continuing on today. Like, for example, another area of our focus is addressing the issues of children. Russia has kidnapped about over 700,000 children. There's only
700,000 children?
From 2022, 700,000 children have been kidnapped by Russia. About 20,000 have been identified by the Ukrainian government. According to UNICEF, about 2,000 children have been either killed or injured. So imagine it's a couple of elementary schools here in Canada completely wiped out. It's what they're doing it's not any different than what has been happening in the past centuries. When Russia ended up advancing in 2024, they've quickly ended up taking over a few cities, and Ukraine has a system of foster homes, so they're institutional foster homes. And very quickly, immediately after advancing, these children have been taken away into Russia. They've been stripped of their identity. A lot of them have been renamed and inserted into the Russian world in a way. And because of these processes, it's very difficult for Ukrainians to identify these children, and there's a lot of work to be done in order to see where they are. And the thing is, it's not only institutionalized foster homes where they've taken children from. After advancing, they've been using tactics such as telling Ukrainian parents that it's safer for their children to go to a summer camp somewhere in Russia. They've been forcefully taking these children away, and also doing the same thing, stripping them of their identity, integrating into the Russian system, putting them up for adoption. And that's why it's very difficult right now to be identifying these children. And we're not talking about we're not even talking about the attacks on these children and the mental the mental impact that's taking on them. There's also significant cases of sexual abuse in these children. So Russia is using exactly the same tactics they've been using for centuries. And the thing is, we as Canada Ukraine Foundation have a few projects focused on children, and we're currently launching another campaign, which is going to be taking place in November. We're doing an auction for the children of Ukraine, where we'll be raising money to address medical needs, rehab, and working together with organizations that are returning children from Russia, and also the rehabilitation and reintegration to the Ukrainian world. Some of them were once again, children were taken away from their Ukrainian parents. They haven't seen them for years. Parents don't know where they are. And it's really should be an effort of the international community, and Canada is actually taking a step in order to as part of Canada's priority within the 10-step peace formula by Zelensky, and has become a part of the coalition on the human dimension of this war. So it's all about the people, it's all about the children as well. And the work that we need to do is, like, the list of things that are needed in order to be able to achieve that is endless. So, it's painful subjects to talk about, especially where children are concerned.
Larry, 1 in 4 Canadians has a blood relative in the United States, an incredibly close neighboring set of countries. I understand the statistic is the same, that 1 in 4 Ukrainians has a blood relative living in Russia.
And that's the impact. That's the impact, as I said. That's the impact of the politics the imperialistic politics that have been going on in the past. So, there have been incentives for people to move to Russia if they want to build, live that kind of American dream life in order to achieve what they want to. So there have been these incentives, and then there has been forceful relocation, like all the way into Siberia. Like, for example, I have relatives also in living in Russia that I don't speak to anymore because after years they've integrated into that society and they don't see, most of them don't see this attack on Ukraine to be an issue, and that's very unfortunate. So a lot of these families have been split up because unfortunately the Russian propaganda machine has been successful even in the past 10 years, ever since the Russian aggression in Ukraine has begun. It has been speeding up, and families are split up, and no one talks, like in my case, I don't speak to them anymore because they find that it's completely normal for Russian missiles to hit civilian infrastructure in Ukraine and targeting civilians. Like, I mean, that's the power of that propaganda. You end up believing that sending 97% of the missiles into civilian infrastructure, into hospitals, into schools, into power generating facilities is completely normal. So that's what we all as a civilized society have to deal with in the future. And right now as well, is dealing with that mentality that targeting civilians and killing civilians is a completely normal and acceptable thing. And
The
unfortunately,
death
that's the mentality in Russia.
the death rate of Russian soldiers, I'm told, we hear is extreme and something that is a multiple of Ukrainian fatalities because of the Russian strategies versus and tactics versus the Ukrainian tactics. Um, in Afghanistan, the Russian-Afghanistan war, it was mothers that were the people that protested the most because of how many of their sons lost their lives in Afghanistan. Do you think that there's going to be any blowback in Russia to the number of people that have lost their lives?
I have to say, once again, I'm focusing on humanitarian aspects of the issue. But one thing that I'll say is that if Russian mothers have cared, or Russian people would have been disagreeing, they would have stood up and said something. At the beginning of the war, we've seen some of that on the news, but that has very quickly stopped. And once again, the reason all of that stopped is because majority, I think the majority of Russians, vast majority, that's the scary part, believe in the right, that they're in the right. And I think there's what, 100 and over 110 million Russians living. Someone has to probably check that. There's 110 million Russians living on that land, and if majority of them are thinking that their government is in the right, I mean, that you do the math. That's quite a dangerous position for us to be in, even as Canadians. Like, Russia seems to be very far for us, but if you go north, it's actually very close. So that's quite a dangerous neighbor to live with, not only for Ukrainians but also for us as Canadians. I'm pretty sure that if the society was united, the outcome and the reaction would have been different. Like, look at Ukrainians. They have been, every single time Ukrainians are unhappy with something, they told their government that they're unhappy. It's the Orange Revolution. It's the revolution of dignity. It's the resistance that we see right now against Russian aggression. So this is really a discussion to have, to have about the propaganda machine that is there and the way that the society there has been washed over decades in order to prepare the society for this war. But when it comes to the humanitarian aspects, the longer this war will continue, the more money we'll have to spend on the humanitarian aspects. So I have to say, our work is endless currently.
It's got
There's
to
a
be.
lot of
It's
needs.
unbelievable. It's got to be incredible. The demand has got to
There's a
be, and it's astounding to me that the economy still seems to function. And I've interviewed people that are still going to work day in and day out.
Mhm. Like like quite often we as Canadians we see the like I see the issues with I feel the impact of uh, uh, the way that the war in Ukraine is impacting us here as Canadians. The moment we're going to find we're going to find the moment we start currently, we see the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine on our lives here in Canada. As soon as this war is going to be, will end with Ukrainian victory and the victory of Ukrainian people. We'll see a positive trend for us here as well. So it is within
What's
our
the positive
interest.
trend that you see?
So sorry, I said what I meant is we will see the positive trends once the war in Ukraine will end
Right.
with
Gotcha.
Ukrainian victory.
We're chatting tonight with Valeriy, who's the executive director of the Canada Ukraine Foundation, about their humanitarian efforts to support what's going on in Ukraine, but also a little bit about what's actually happening in Ukraine. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to ask him a little bit when we come back about how he feels about Canada's support of Ukraine. Stay with us, everyone. Back in just 2 minutes, we're talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what it's like to live in the community in Ukraine and the impact. We've talked about what was it, 97% of all missiles attacking human infrastructure, civilian infrastructure. We talked about was it 700,000 children that you think have been abducted and taken to Russia? Some of the numbers, some of the facts, some of the circumstances are just astounding. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Valeriy Kostyuk is the executive director of the Canada Ukraine Foundation. We're chatting about what Ukraine needs in humanitarian aid, and the Canada Ukraine Foundation, what they're doing to try to raise attention, to raise awareness, and to raise money for Ukraine. Valeriy, I got to ask you, are you happy with the Canadian government's response, the Canadian people's response? I understand that the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada is like the largest or the second largest in the world outside of Ukraine. So there's a lot of Ukrainians in Canada. We've had a close association over the years. There's a lot of Ukrainians that emigrated to Ontario, to Saskatchewan, to Manitoba. And, Ukraine was becoming democratic, if not was democratic, on the border of Russia in Eastern Europe. There were a lot of hopes for what the example would be of a successful westernizing, joining the world community, joining the European community, potentially becoming democratic, etc. Have we supported Ukraine enough?
So, first of all, I would like to start with immense gratitude towards my fellow Canadians and towards the Canadian society that has been supporting Ukraine immensely, not only since 2022, but since 1991 when Ukraine has regained its independence. The unity of our society has been quite inspiring. And I have to say, Canada has welcomed over 300,000 Ukrainians to Canada over the last couple of years, people who were seeking refuge, people who have been looking for a safe haven in order to continue building their lives, their families, and all the things that we're as Canadians are all that we all also want. And I have to say, majority of Ukrainians that have moved here have integrated into our economy very, very, very positively. And I have to say, over 70% of Ukrainians that have moved here are currently working together with us in order to build a brighter future, not only for themselves, but also for us. And I have to say the reason it's 70% because the other 30 is children. But I have to say numbers speak for themselves. We've been welcoming Ukrainians here since the 19th century. As you've mentioned, they've been settling all across Canada. There's a lot of prominent Ukrainian Canadians that have been an essential part of our Canadian lifestyle and Canadian the development of our country, and they've been I mean, first of all, let's also talk about the impact that Canada has. There has been a lot of stuff that has been already sent. I think numbers speak for themselves when it comes to the 80 million that we've managed to send together with Canadians. And Ukrainians are immensely thankful for that as well. However, as I said, there's never enough of anything at war. So we have to continue doing what we've already been doing and more if we want to continue supporting Ukrainians.
Some
I
people
have to
think
say,
that the lack of our funding of 2% of GDP to defense, which is our requirement on NATO, shows our lack of commitment to defense, our lack of commitment to global stability, and that because of that, we haven't had enough munitions, armaments, et cetera, to support Ukraine. Do you think that the Canadian military has been sending enough? Do you think the Canadian government should be spending 2% of GDP and sending more money, more armaments, more munitions to Ukraine?
well, as a representative of a Canadian charity, I have to say that my priority, of course, is humanitarian aid. However, one thing that I'll add, an investment into the investment into the assistance that Canada has been providing to Ukraine has been greatly appreciated by the
Okay,
Ukrainian
okay.
people.
You're not
And
going to
even
answer my
before,
question, but that's all right. I
and
understand.
before,
Larry, I got to ask.
and I'll say, yeah, go ahead.
Donald
Apologies.
Trump, the Republican candidate for president of the United States, the former president of the United States, has said, and I won't ask you to make a political comment, but has said that he'd end the Ukraine Russian war the first day that he gets elected president. And whether that's achievable or not, he effectively thinks that there's a potential for negotiated settlement between Russia and Ukraine. Do you think there's a chance for negotiated settlement between Russia and Ukraine?
Mm, here's the thing. My priority is Canada and what the aid that we can send to Canada. I have to say it's up to the American people on their internal to their internal politics. I have to say there since 2014 there have been attempts in negotiating some type of peace with Russia. And the Western world has been focusing on that narrative, but clearly in 2022 that did not work. So I'll just based on the past, I think, and the analysis of the past, that should explain what the future holds for us, and I'll leave that at that.
The Ukrainian army has invaded part of Russia. Do you think that was a smart strategy?
I'm not a political. I'm not a military analyst. But I have to say, quite often, what is being mentioned is that that Ukraine needs to defend itself, and they've taken a step in order to do so. So once again, I'm not a military strategist. I focus on humanitarian aid.
I understand. So last political question, and you probably won't answer it, but last political question. So, Moldova has had an election, and it looks like pro-Western people have won in Moldova. Georgia has had an election. It looks like pro-Russian people have won in Georgia. How does that play out, if at all, in what's happening in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe?
Well, I have to say once again, Moldova and Georgia are two independent countries that have a population that has to decide and has to choose their own future. I have to say, Ukrainians and Georgia, Ukrainians had very good relationships with people in both Moldova and Georgia over the past,
You were both part of the
over the past
USSR.
years. And I have to say, both Moldovans and Georgians have had a lot of impact. The people have also contributed a lot to Ukrainian to Ukraine in the past 30 years. I have a lot of friends who are from Moldova, who are from Georgia. I've been to Georgia. I'm looking forward to one day visiting Moldova, it's two countries of really great people. So I mean, at the end of the day, we understand each other's. I think the way that on the personal level we're able to connect with Georgians and Moldovans is that we know that we had the past under Russian imperialism, and I think that's a point where we are able to connect. I mean, internal politics is of course is up to Moldovan people and Georgian people. I wouldn't want to be able to. I wouldn't want to go into someone else's house and tell them how to live. But at the end of the day, it's up to the Moldovan and Georgian people and how they see their future.
Orient for all of our listeners just for a second, if you could, the geography here. So Moldova is what, to the southwest of Ukraine? Is that correct?
Yes, I mean it's about an hour. The capital of Moldova is a few hour drive from my hometown of Odessa, and Georgia is our neighbor on the other side of the Black Sea.
And I'm told is quite
So
beautiful.
it's a phenomenal country. I have to say, Georgia, and there is a prominent Georgian community here in Canada. And I have to say, if you end up, there's actually a few really great Georgian restaurants across the GTA. But it's great to see. It's great to see that. It's great to see that our communities are able to unite and do really great things. And as I said, Georgian and Moldovans have made a positive impact in Ukraine over the last 30 years by working together. There's been business collaboration and so on. And I really hope that that we will continue having such a prosperous relationship between our people and our
Larry,
communities.
it seems like it's almost a stalemate. It's been 2.5 years of this war since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. The counteroffensive, it's not a counteroffensive, the invasion by Ukraine into Russia is a sort of a new angle on things, but it would appear that Russia is continuing to make slow but steady progress on the east of Ukraine. How do you think it's all going to play out? What do you think the end game is here?
Well, I know that the end game of the Ukrainian government is to restore Ukraine's territorial integrity. And one thing that I have to say is that Ukrainians have been asking for help since day one of this full-scale invasion. What we can do in order to help Ukrainians um, win is to deliver to Ukraine the aid that they are asking for with a sense of urgency. And that's what we as Canada Ukraine Foundation are doing. We are working fast. The demand never ends. And we continue on delivering, like right now, we're working on winterization. Ukrainians are asking us for the things that we talked about at the beginning of this call. Our goal is to deliver it to them before the winter, not after. So I think in order to ensure that Ukrainians have whatever they need in order to make through this war, we have to be able to deliver that quickly and impactfully. So I don't. I think with our collective efforts, we can ensure that the Ukrainian people will win this war, and we will be able to benefit from a communal collaboration in the future once this war is over.
I congratulate you for being as positive as you are, and that's obviously part of your job. And I think you're doing a great job in that regard. So thank you for that. But I gotta think, a person in your position, you probably hear, if not on a daily basis, probably on an hourly basis, about a new challenge in Ukraine, a new problem, a new demand that they're looking for, a new need that they have about destructions of infrastructure, of destruction of homes, of apartments, of houses, of schools, of hospitals, etc., of abduction of children, of rape, of sexual violence, of families that will never be the same because people have either been killed at the front or killed in some attack. And so the amount of negative news that you must get must be incredible. I can't imagine it. How do you stay hopeful? How do you stay positive? That how do you sit here and tell us that you think that Ukraine will win, given that?
Well, one thing that I'll say, right, as I mentioned, Ukrainian people are brave. Ukrainian people are courageous. I know these people very, very well. And the positive angle, the fact that Ukraine has a capital of humor also talks about resilience. The level of of the scale of the issues that we see, of course, is very, very concerning. And one thing that motivates the entire community, not only myself, but the entire community, is to do whatever we can, whatever it takes to help Ukrainians resolve all these issues. So that's the motivation that's behind all of us. And the thing is, we all have a personal connection to that place, to Ukraine. I one day want to come back to my hometown of Odessa to be able to take a stroll through the boulevard right next to the ocean. I want to be able to go on a boat and sail through the most beautiful Black Sea. I want to be able to go to the southern part of the Odessa region and enjoy the beautiful wine of Bessarabia and enjoy and to be able to smell the air of Ukraine. And the thing is, before the full-scale invasion and before the full-scale invasion, I saw I saw the great progress that was being made through various programs and various initiatives that Ukrainians have ended up pushing forward. And it's very unfortunate that in 2022, Russians decided to invade. And the thing is, seeing like we spent a lot of time connecting with Ukrainians as well, and in order to understand the need. I have to say, there's a lot of programs that we finance on the ground, and a lot of them are aimed towards children. So in our annual report, I highly recommend everyone checking it out and seeing what we have, what the programs that we support. But there was this girl, Polina, from Kupiansk, and her father and older brother were killed, and they ended up finding refuge with her other siblings in the City of Goodness, where we were able that we funded. And that was originally a hub for victims of domestic violence, but since the war started, it transformed into rehab centers for families and children. And seeing and living with the fact that we're able to help Polina by finding that refuge, and then sooner or later, once this war is over, Polina will be able to have a bright future, and she will be an essential part of this rebuild and reconstruction. And the thing is, like right now, with our auction for the children of Ukraine that is going to be starting in November, we're able to raise funds by collaborating with La Maison des Encants and various brands across Canada. Like in that auction, you'll be able to win prizes from Fairmont, from Tim Hortons, from Nobis, from Mattel, from Starbucks Entertainment, Winnipeg Jets. You can even get a backstage tour of Murdoch Mysteries. By uniting over this positivity and turning that positivity into funds which we can later use in order to help Ukrainian children, because they're the future, to have what they need in order to get through this difficult time, I have absolutely no doubt that the future for Ukrainians and the future for Ukrainian Canadians is going to be bright, and the bond is going to be even stronger. So
Larry, I
I
appreciate
don't
you joining us in that regard. Remind us the website people should go to.
Please visit cufoundation.ca to learn about our programs and to contribute to the work that we're doing on behalf of Canadians.
Larry, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. That was a tough but thoughtful and inspirational conversation about what's going on and how you're supporting Ukraine. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back with a couple of my own personal comments on what's going on in Ukraine and the Ukraine Russian invasion of Ukraine in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everyone. Valeriy, all the best with your fundraising. Good night.
Thank you, Brian. And by the way, we have an event on November 2nd at 1 Yonge Street together with the organization called Save Ukraine. So I would like to invite you to join us. I'll send you information through Zay and Shannon.
Very kind of you. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2.